You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. Your love changes everything. There's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into
Good morning, Rooted Men. Matt Ryan, Elder with Firmly Rooted Ministries. Pleasure to be with you this Friday morning, Groundhog Day of all days. Those of you who've been with Firmly Rooted for some time likely remember a Groundhog Day series of sermons and a long-running message from Pastor Tom to the men, especially about those things we keep waking up to. The movie Groundhog Day really is a funny look in the way we look at it as the life of a Christian. That there's these things inside of us, these things that keep happening around us that we can't seem to avoid. And it seems like every day we wake up and there they are, and they're back, and they're back. And this process of learning to take every thought captive, to make them submit to our faith, to die to those old things again and again, to truly repent of them, turn them over at the foot of the cross. And it's kind of this journey that we're always on, right? It's the journey of a Christian man, of a Christian period, where we have the opportunity each day to wake up renewed and refreshed and move away from those Groundhog Day experiences. So a bit of a funny holiday, so to speak, in the Firmly Rooted world, and that it really becomes a poignant lesson for the way that we can live. You know, there's salvation issues and there's quality of life issues that are pointed out throughout the Old Testament, the Gospels, the New Testament. And this is not a salvation issue, but it's the quality of life side. We focus on when we can keep returning to the cross and getting rid of those old habits, the old behaviors, dying to the old man. God can really do miraculous things in us, can really change us, can redeem us from a creation in which we aren't redeemable. We're hopeless without him. So anyway, maybe that for those of you who are familiar with that, that's a good memory of a good long study we did or have visited several times. For those of you who haven't, boy, maybe we should dust that one off and do it again, because it really is good stuff. And so today we're still in Mark. We're working through Mark chapter 6. And today we're going to hear the story of when Jesus fed 5,000. One of the most probably preached on sermons, I would say, one of the most known or widely renowned stories of the Christian faith, stories of the Bible that even people who have no faith or no knowledge of the Bible may have heard of and learned and know this story just because of its, I guess, cultural relevance, the fact that people are just widely aware of it. Of course, that means we've been through many studies on it too. So as we dig in here, the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Rest. You know, this is one of those places that we skip in this lesson, but boy, is that important, right? Doing God's work, doing ministry work is so valuable, but it can also be very draining, right? It can be, you've got a lot of people competing for your attention, or a lot of people who might need, because you have something that the world needs. But it's so important to go to a quiet place and rest, to renew, right? The Sabbath being the idea of that day of rest, which comes, of course, from creation itself, from the very beginning of Genesis, where it took God 6 days to create the world, and then the seventh day he rested. Jesus went and rested a lot, didn't he? And a lot of times today, especially in the world that we live in, the busyness we get into, we can feel selfish when we rest. Selfish if we take a vacation, or selfish if we take a day off from here or there, whether it be work or other commitments, or even with our kids, right? We might need some quiet time. We might need a break. I just want you to remember that Jesus understood the importance of that too, and that it was part of the ministry. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place, but many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them. Isn't it funny? Even when you're trying to get away and get rest, you can't. The people are flooding. And I can relate to this. I think probably some of you can too, especially if you have young children, or a dog in my case, where, I've got everyone in the house is competing for attention. And that's part of part of life of children, even up through teen years. They're still kind of competing for that attention. And my dog is like at my feet 100% of the time. If I'm standing up in the house, she is at my feet, wagging her tail, begging for something, always, all the time. And it's like I have my daughter, I'm cooking dinner for the family. I'm trying to entertain her, making sure the boys are taken care of, and the dog's at my feet. So I can relate to this when the world seems to all be coming to you and needing and needing and needing. Um, and sometimes you try to get to a quiet place and you can't even get there. You can't even get to the quiet place before everyone's already there ahead of them waiting. And so I can kind of feel this. But I love what Jesus does here, right? Because they were like a sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. He relished this opportunity to be compassionate, right? Rather than get annoyed, rather than draw a boundary where he's saying, no, I need rest right now, which he certainly could have done. He could have evaded the crowd and gone off into peace. We'd seen him do that at other times, go off into the woods, right, to a solitary place. But he doesn't. He has compassion. Like a sheep without a shepherd. What a powerful image that is, right? Because of course, sheep, when they don't have a shepherd, they get into trouble, they stray, they get eaten by wolves. They're in great danger basically all the time where they don't have someone watching over them, which of course is the greatest illustration, I think, for Christ being the great shepherd, right? I am one of those statements, right? One of those starting to understand the different facets of God, that he is the great shepherd who watches over us and protects us. And we need him desperately. We're so lost without him. We're, at the will of the wolves without him. And so just a great analogy, something I love. And of course, then we get into, I guess what you would say is more of the meat for today. For some reason, this isn't scrolling for me. I'm not sure why not. So anyway, we see that, the disciples are coming up to Jesus saying it's remote. It's already very late. Send them away so they can, find something to eat. But Jesus answered, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take 8 months of a man's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. I think you all know the story then. They took the loaves of bread, the 2 fish, they blessed them, multiplied them, and fed 5,000 men. Now, of course, we're careful to remember that that is just speaking of the men. There was also women and children. So maybe 10,000, 12,000. We don't know the exact number. But clearly, Jesus performing a miracle of abundance here, right? So it makes you think. What do you think of the disciples' reaction? It would take 8 months of a man's wages. A perfectly reasonable human response. Looking at the world from its limitations, right? We can't possibly do that. There is no way we could scrounge up that much money, and it wouldn't be justifiable to pay all that money just to feed these people when they can go feed themselves. Why would we do that? And of course, he has something greater in store. So one of the things that I think we often look at this reading and talk about Jesus' authority, God's power to do the miraculous, to perform the impossible. But I think sometimes we fail to connect the fact that in our humanness, in our limitation, to see that something is impossible. Why aren't we expecting God to make it happen anyway? So when we examine Jesus' life and we examine what he does here, I often get kind of preoccupied, right? The task is too big, it's too much. There's no way I can do it. But God wants us to believe in the impossible, right? And I think sometimes what we really have to be careful of is that the parts of Christianity that seem impossible, the part that required divine intervention, the parts where they go, okay, that's too big for a human, sometimes they may keep us from even believing, bringing us back to the unbelief we talked about last week. It's easy to say if Jesus could feed 5,000 men or even 10,000 people with these few loaves of bread, don't you think he can do anything in your life? That's kind of easy to say. But to think about it in a way that really accepts that causes you to expect it to happen, right? If I really believe he did that, if he stepped in and he wants to do those things, then what I need to be doing is meeting the impossible. I do what I can about it and expect him to take over and do the rest. I'm not saying there's going to be some guaranteed delivery, right? It's not I'm going to go buy a lotto ticket and my part is done by going to buy it and he's going to put the right numbers on the paper, right? It's not something like that. Although I wouldn't put that past him. I don't know that I don't think that's the way he works, but there's nothing I'm going to put past him, but there are times that he wants to meet us with the miraculous. There are times that we can expect this from him, that we can be up against a wall, up against a Groundhog's Day, up against something that just keeps happening. It keeps being a desert, or it keeps being this empty hole where there's no answers, no responses. And he's just waiting for us, right? We should sit in those places expectantly. God, I know I'm in this desert. I know that things haven't gone the way I wanted to again and again, but boy, this is going to make a great testimony when you come through. When you perform the miracle you have in store at the end of this, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to wake up every day, be faithful, be strong, keep moving forward. And I know that at some point you're going to meet me and you're going to finish the impossible, because it's impossible to me to get past this hurdle right now. I can't see a way through it, a way around it, but you can. So just want to encourage you. Let's think that way with the Groundhog's Day challenges we might be facing. Let's expect God to perform the impossible, because he can and he wants to for us. I love you, man. I hope that's a good message for you today. I see I have once again gone well over on time. I apologize for that. Let's make it a great day, a great Groundhog's Day, a great weekend. Let's make it a firmly rooted day. And may someone see Jesus in us today. Peace.